And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Good evening, Tampa Bay. We are here live. Not live, we're recording this. It's Tuesday, 7:09 p.m. I'm joined by the one, the only, Ryan Davis, our beloved Rowdies broadcaster. I had to go out this offseason to find myself a signing. James is out of town. We got one right here. He's on loan, at least for the week. Ryan, how are you? What's going on in your life?
Doing great. Just enjoying the holidays. It's been a fantastic holiday so far for me and my family. I'm just so privileged to be on this podcast. You guys nail it every time. So really happy to be here. Thank you.
No, thanks for being here, Ryan. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you. Again, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everybody listening. It's a lovely time. It's December 26th, one day after Christmas, hoping everybody had time to spend with their families, enjoying some time off, some well-deserved time off from work. And thanks for tuning in to this week's podcast. Obviously, we're here to talk about the Rowdies, who gifted us with two more exciting signings. We talked about Arteaga a bit last week. We'll mention him a bit more this week. And we'll talk about the two new guys that we know about in just a little bit. Later on, we'll talk a bit with Ryan about how the team's shaping up, some other big moves around the league, and a couple games Ryan might be looking forward to calling in particular. The schedule's out. We know who we're playing. We know there's a new team coming to town at some point this year, and that'll be fun. Before we jump into any of that, like and subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on any major platform you get your podcast, please, and follow us at RBLR Sports on social media. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on Facebook. Eureka even has us on Threads. I haven't opened that app in a while. I forgot it still exists, but we're there. Check us out and interact with all of our content every week. Now, Ryan, again, thanks for being here with us. Let's just jump into it. There's so much to talk about, and I really want to get your take. You're much more professional about this than I am. I do this for fun. This is your job, and I love your professional take. So let's talk a little bit about Arteaga again. Before we mention any of the other signings, I know we wanted to talk about him, kind of what he brings to the table, maybe the comparison to JJ Williams. What are you excited about him this offseason and going into next year?
He's dynamic. So Arteaga can play let's say play the player 3-5-2. And we're going to get into Coach Nielsen and what the plan might be. But he's going to be up there with Cal Jennings. But he's not going to just be a stagnant forward. You know, JJ he certainly learned the ways of the force in regards to the Tampa Bay Rowdies with his pressing and his movement. But Arteaga is going to give you that right off of the bat. So he's going to maybe drift out to the left or to the right and allow Cal Jennings to play into these spaces. So he can create space for the players and create shots. When I say shots, create chances for players to score and get goals for himself. So I think Arteaga, because of his style of play, he's quick, he's slippery, he can create chances for other players and get goals, but also a lot of experience. I mean, this guy played in Croatia. He played in Bolivia, up in the mountains of Bolivia. He played in his hometown, Venezuela. Of course, in the USL, Phoenix Rising, just coming off a championship win. So he's going to bring that know-how, what it takes to be consistent throughout the season. So a real professional coming into the locker room to partner up with Cal Jennings. And we just talked about what he can bring on the field with his movement. So I think you combine those two elements, and I think the Rowdies really have a complete forward to complement Cal Jennings.
Yeah, you touched on something I think really important that I don't think we've talked a lot about with James, that you're right. He's coming off of a championship season. He literally just came off winning the title with Phoenix Rising. I think that's huge because there's plenty of players that are so talented in this roster. And we've had such great rosters over the past several seasons. We've been missing that last bit to take us over the finish line and get us to the title. That's a huge factor you mentioned right there. He's just coming off that title season. He knows how to win the title, obviously, and he brings that experience to this locker room. So thanks for mentioning that. Again, he's 6'1" forward. He's a big guy. We know, like you said, that he's an agile guy, super dynamic. I think that's something that is similar to JJ Williams. We've talked a lot about how, on this podcast, about how he surprised us with how quick he was. Dribbling ability, his hold-up play. He kind of did a little bit of everything. I think James and I were a bit concerned when we saw he was moving to Rhode Island, who, by the way, are building a really great team in their first season.
Yes, they are.
And I think you've touched on everything important there. Arteaga kind of brings all of that, and I don't think we'll be surprised by that dynamic aspect that he has.
No, not at all. Not to say JJ Williams was bad. He was great. The problem with JJ at the beginning of the season is that Coach Collins, as we all learned over the last 4 to 5 years, wants a high pressing team that the first defender is your forward. And JJ Williams had to get that in his head. And it took him going all the way to San Diego to come off the bench. This is 2.5 months into the season to really get stuck in, as they say, and really press. And that gave Coach Collins the belief that he can get into the starting lineup. And that's when he started to get momentum. And when he got momentum, he started to get going. But 2.5 months in, JJ really wasn't much of a factor for the Rowdies. And that was huge. Remember, we had such a slow start last season. That was
Yeah.
just one of the contributing factors, but it was a factor nonetheless.
Yeah. Here's a question for you, Ryan. I know we got towards like that middle part of the season, and that's when we really started seeing the JJ Williams, Cal Jennings duo really start to pick up steam. By the end of the year, we're talking about probably the best attacking duo in the league in terms of what they were able to do together. What do you think about how long it might take to build that same sort of chemistry between Arteaga and Cal Jennings? Is that something you think we can expect, or do you think we're looking at a different sort of play style, maybe not that interconnected duo we saw between JJ Williams and Cal Jennings last season?
Just want to touch on Arteaga, looking at his resume and just going back to exactly what I said before, his ability to play in multiple countries, play in different formations and different coaches. I think he's such a professional coming into this system. It's going to be very clear, I think, to what the Rowdies were just about a year ago when Coach Collins, before he left. I think it's going to be very similar. And I think Arteaga is going to understand very quickly what's needed and how to work off of Cal Jennings. So I really expect Arteaga to get on the run and get going. I mean, this is not magic, right? These are human beings out there. It's going to take maybe a week or two when the season starts. This is with the entire off season. And I think Arteaga will be off and running very, very quickly, or a lot sooner than JJ got going. And again, not taking away from JJ's talent, just took a while for JJ to grasp what was needed.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point as well. And I think going into last season, there was a bit of I don't know. I guess there was a bit of a question about who would take up that main striker role. We had a lot of forwards last year. There's a few games. I don't know if you remember during that really weird injury spell, there was several games where we had 4 outfield players available on the bench, and they were all attackers. It was like Lucky Nkosana, Felix Schroeder, Ariel Martinez, just a bunch of strikers. It was a very weird time. But yeah, I think you're right. I think this might be a bit more clear cut about who we're looking at in Arteaga and Cal Jennings up top. And I think that'll be
I mean, he just going back to this championship season that Arteaga went through last season, he understands for his own individual growth is not the word, but his ability to perform. He knows what is needed of himself week in and week out to get to that place where he can produce. That's in the training room, that's in practice. He knows, being 31 years old, playing in multiple countries, what it takes to get himself going. So I think it's going to be a lot quicker transition with Arteaga than JJ.
Awesome. All right. On that note, I know we mentioned Neil Collins, by the way. Let me just mention him and give him a shout out. They just got a little W today as well. They won against Port Vale 3-2. I just saw they're in 7th place, just out of that playoff spot in 6th place, 2 points behind. I always mispronounce. Like, I feel bad because I know it was I know Barnsley is the right name, but I think it's like Stevenage. I'm not.
Let's go Stevenage. It's okay.
Let's go. I always feel bad like trying to pronounce English names. I remember the first time I saw Norwich, I was like Norwich City, and then people were getting mad at me. So I'm not even going to try and pronounce half of these names. But congrats to Barnsley on the win today. On that note, Ryan, let's move on to some of the other big names we saw coming in this past week. I want to ask you about 2 guys that, frankly, I don't know too much about. I only came to know them because of, the Rowdies signing them. We'll talk about Danny Crisostomo first, a American-born, Peruvian heritage, attacking-minded central midfielder is how Nielsen described him. He had 8 appearances with LAFC, 6 appearances with LAFC 2 last season. The season before that was kind of the season that I guess gave him a bit more attention in the U.S. soccer landscape. He had 3 goals and a team-leading 7 assists for Las Vegas in that season, across 34 appearances. So a guy that didn't play a ton last year, but definitely has the ability to produce when he's playing a lot. Ryan, what do you know about this guy, Danny Crisostomo? What do you think he can bring to this squad? Because he seems like he can move up the field. He's going to create chances. But frankly, from last season, we don't have a ton to tell about him. We're going to have to go back to the 2022 season to see really where that offensive prowess comes from.
Well, he got 6 matches in for LAFC, so he got some MLS minutes last season, played in the MLS next, but 26 years old, that means he is now hitting his prime. So we can expect the best of Danny Crisostomo next season. He is what we're seeing in modern football. Yes, he's a forward-minded central midfielder, but let's suppose the Rowdies go in a 3-4-3, okay? So you have Jordan Doherty and Crisostomo in the middle of the park. I'm sorry to say this, the Rowdy fans, but Jan Ekra, legend for the Rowdies, over 100 appearances. He's a living legend, but eventually you have to move on, and Jan Ekra will be the first person that will help Crisostomo blend in. But he's now the type of player in the middle of the park that has great ball handling skills and has the ability to play in traffic. And that's very, very important in modern football because there's so much congestion in the middle of the park and you can't afford to lose the ball in that area because so many goals are conceded when center midfielders or center backs give up the ball in that central position. 2 passes, you're in on goal and you're down a goal. So Crisostomo is going to be that sort of person that can bring the ball through the midfield with a Lewis Hilton, with a Jordan Doherty, and get the ball to Charlie Dennis, Leo Fernandez, talking about Rowdies legends, and Arteaga and company. So I think you have to have one of those skillful players in the middle of the park to not only share the ball, but to get past defenders to create space for the forward players. Because you want your forward players to not only get the ball, but to get the ball into some sort of momentum. You don't want to always be checking to the ball with your back to the goal. That's no momentum at all. If Crisostomo can take some of that pressure off by attacking the space and releasing the ball to the forwards in momentum, in stride, that then will create a lot of havoc for the opposing backline. So that dynamic in the middle of the park is really, really important. And I think he's going to bring that in his prime of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's some great insight as well. It looks like he is, I don't know, like you said, like Jan Ekra-esque kind of player. But again, we have to move on at some point. I'm really curious, I guess, we have yet to see what Robbie Nielsen's system is going to look like, obviously. But there's some congestion there at that central midfield spot. Already at the early point of the offseason, like we said, we have Crisostomo coming in. Obviously, we have Lewis Hilton, who re-signed. Charlie Dennis, kind of an attacking midfielder in that central role. Zach Arivo as well. I mean, there's a lot of guys that play central midfielder, different types of players. I'm really curious how Crisostomo is going to fit into the system. He seems to me like he's definitely competing for a starting spot off the bat.
And I think that's huge, though. I mean, competition in this level of the game is everything. Charlie Dennis, I mean, he dragged us up and down Erlang's field for most of last season because there was nobody else behind him. Leo Fernandez was gone first week in the off season. Sorry, in the preseason. So Charlie Dennis had to log all of these minutes. He answered the bell, but it's hard to ask him to do that again for the second season. So you have to have players like Crisostomo. Of course, Leo Fernandez is going to be back. Zach Hervo is going to be competing with Lewis Hilton and Jordan Doherty. So I think it's very important to have competition, and it's a lot of soccer to play. You have the US Open Cup that's going to be there. So you have those teams, you have a whole roster available for that competition as well. So I think it's important to have all of these players week in and week out vying for spots and also covering for spots when players get injured. So I love the fact that Crisostomo is going to add to that depth.
For sure. And you mentioned the US Open Cup, tons of news coming out of there. We can spend a whole episode talking about that. The crazy back and forth between US soccer and MLS. But I'll digress from that. It seems like we can spend an hour talking about just
Sure.
that. But
Absolutely.
that being said, Crisostomo looks like a pretty exciting player. Admittedly, again, I did not know too much about him off of last season. But having gone back, done a little bit of research, seeing his highlights, he seems like a very, very good looking piece that we can add to the midfield that will certainly help bolster that kind of connection between the midfield and the attack. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can do. We know Lewis Hilton got injured last year pretty early on, and we're struggling to kind of find that replacement for him. But last year was riddled with injury, so it's great to see that we
Yeah.
have, right now at least, a plethora of central midfielders. I'm sure we might add, who knows, maybe one more. There's plenty of offseason left. But yeah, Danny Crisostomo, again, attacking-minded central midfielder. We'll have to see what he can do. We'll see what his role will be in Nielsen's system. Anything else to add on him, Mr. Ryan Davis?
Well, I do actually. What I was in that position, not on him, but really, really sad that we didn't get to see the most or the best of Zach Hervo.
Sure.
Zach Hervo's ability to break up a play and then have the attacking ability to turn that into a chance.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's up there in a top 5 percentile in USL of that sort of statistic where he can break something up and then convert that into a chance, whether it was a pass or driving the ball through that open space by himself after he turned the ball over from the other team to then convert a chance or create a chance. I think it was really sad that we didn't get a chance to see a lot of that. That was the hopes to see him with Lewis Hilton in the middle of the park, but didn't get to see that, of course, because of the injury. That's just part of sports, as you know. So I really hope the Rowdies keep him and we get a chance to see Zach in full flight because I think he has a lot to offer this team. I mean, he's a Haitian international. This guy played for Haiti in Japan, for Haiti in Argentina, against Argentina. He's seen a lot of football, and I think it's important to have that type of player on the field and in the locker room.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really, really excited to see what he can do. Again, we didn't really have the opportunity to see his full potential with this squad this season. Again, he's been re-signed. We know that, but just like we saw with JJ Williams, it doesn't guarantee we'll see him in March. So hopefully we keep him around. He has so much to offer. He was a huge headache for the Rowdies. I remember when he used to play for Birmingham just a couple seasons ago. I'm really looking forward to seeing him compete for that starting spot. We'll see who ends up taking the main role. I wouldn't be surprised if it's him because, again, he's so talented. Again, Asian international. He has so much to offer. I hope we can see the full Zach Hervo experience this year. That goes for plenty of other players who were injured as well. I mean, Deon Harris was injured for a lot of last year as well. Leo Fernandez was obviously injured for most of last year. And there's so many good players we had that were riddled with injuries. Lewis Hilton that are coming back and should have a full offseason to recover, to get to their best. I keep seeing content from Leo Fernandez's Instagram of him doing his offseason workouts. It's so exciting to see.
He's such a professional, man. I mean, we talk about Leo being, of course, the MVP of the USL last season, not the season gone, and literally not playing a minute till, of course, the dying minutes of the season. So that doesn't really count. But to miss that influence on the field, of course, Charlie Dennis stepped up, thankfully. But to miss that influence on the field was huge for the Rowdies.
Sure.
And the trajectory of the season. The fact that he's back, am I expecting to see Leo Fernandez, the same Leo Fernandez from 2 seasons ago? I don't. But I'm expecting to see the Leo Fernandez, a mature Leo Fernandez, who's going to bring a different dynamic where he has that confidence in tight spaces. He has confidence in driving the ball and creating chances for players. That's a different type of Leo Fernandez, not doing it all on his own. We saw in 2 seasons ago, just scoring incredible goal after incredible goal in our land, out of our land. Now it's that person that's going to be a little bit more of a brain on the field in the attacking third than this dynamic Brazilian, which he still has. He will have his moments. But it's not going to be 25 out of the 36 games. He'll have those moments. Not anymore.
Yeah, for sure. He's obviously the longest tenured Rowdy currently.
Legend.
Fantastic player. Obviously, we know he's a great leader. I'm sure it was fantastic to have him still around with the team last year
Yeah.
as a locker room presence, but that leadership just means, I think, so much more on the field, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that can be. Cool. Ryan, one last new signing to mention here. None other than a guy named Blake Bodily. A cool name, by the way. I've never heard Bodily as a name before. He
Yeah.
is a left wing back from San Diego Loyal. Rest in peace. He made 32 appearances, had 5 goals and 9 assists, and again was characterized as, quote, an attacking-minded wingback by Nielsen in the press release that they sent out after he was signed. Blake Bodily looks to be, again, a great wingback piece. Looks like he gets up the field very, very often. It's not surprising to see that. I mean, again, we don't really know what Robbie Nielsen's system is going to be exactly. We've heard a lot about it being, like similar, quote unquote, to Neil Collins's system. We know that Neil Collins liked to utilize the wing backs a lot. So if we're buying into that notion that Nielsen has a very similar system, this kind of signing shouldn't be too surprising. Mr. Ryan Davis, what do you think about Blake Bottly's addition to the squad? Maybe what he brings to the team as of now, or at least what we think of the team.
Well, I think it gave us a little peek into what he wants to do, right? So you bring in a left wing back, which the Rowdies did not have for half the season after Ryan Spalding departed. Ryan Spalding, in those little bit of time that he had with the Rowdies, was leading the league in assists.
He was so good.
That's when the Rowdies went on this tear and got full of confidence after Ryan Spalding had so much to do with it. So he departs. Jake Armand, his body, who's absolute quality, Jake Armand, fantastic player, but his body just let him down. And that means the Rowdies will let down because now you have no natural left footer to provide space on the left-hand side. That means you start putting right-footed players like a Seb Dalgard, who we'll get to. But now the defenders always know that Seb Dalgard is going to cut in on his right-hand side, and that's just going to make the field even more compact and not give the attacking players for the Rowdies that valuable space that they were looking for. So now you bring a Blake Bodily in, and the fact that the San Diego Loyal enjoy playing with a 3-5-2 shows that he's comfortable in that position, which means Coach Robbie Nielsen is not going to reinvent the wheel. He's going to play Blake Bodily in his natural left wing-back position, which gives us an understanding now that it is going to be a 5-3-2, 3-4-3, or 3-5-2 formation. And I think that's great. Bodily gave them 5 goals and 9 assists last season for San Diego. That is real production on that left wing-back role. So I think having that type of player who's confident on the ball, brave on the ball in the last third of the field, and can provide service for Cal Jennings and Arteaga, I think that's huge. And let's not forget Charlie Dennis and Leo Fernandez coming in late to finish.
Yeah, for sure. I think he combines the positives we had from Dalgard in the attack Dalgard on the wing and Armin in the wing. It seemed like Armin was always a bit more of a defensive-minded player. Dalgard was one that kind of got up, scored a bunch of goals every once in a while. Scored some bangers, by the way. I mean, the Dalgard revelation was really nice.
Love Dalgard, love him.
Yeah. I mean, he had some great goals from that left wing spot. But it seems like Blake Bodily, from what I understand, a little bit, again, I know about him. He has that attacking mind, but a great defender in his own right, which is what you want in a left wing back. Obviously, you need somebody who's trying to attack and defend with the whole team as well. So it seems like he kind of combines that. As of now, is our only left back, if I'm not mistaken, left wing back.
Correct.
So again, like you said, kind of gives us a hint into what Mr. Robbie Nielsen wants to do with this squad. Interesting signing. And again, I appreciate your insight and kind of directing us into maybe what that means.
Absolutely.
For next season. Again, 5 goals, 9 assists will be a great addition. And I think that continuity is always good. When you're transitioning from a new coach, from an old coach to a new coach, maintaining that system, I think, makes things a bit easier to do, especially with a team that we're keeping a large part of the starters, right? You're kind of just plugging in a couple new guys, maintaining the same system, at least in theory for now. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But yeah, so Blake Bodily, great signing. Anything else to say from that left wing back spot? Anything else on Blake Bodily, Mr. Ryan Davis?
No, I just think it's exciting that the Rowdies actually have a left-sided player. I think
Yeah,
Jake Harmon is still there, but he's gonna obviously back up Blake Bodily and have reserved minutes.
sure,
But having a natural left footer on the left side, that's huge. For
for
the
sure.
right hand side, now that's a great question. I love Connor Antley. I call him the train, Mr. Sunrail himself, up and
Yeah,
on that right hand side. I love his ability to get back and forth, be
yeah,
physical on that right hand side, and his attacking game has really stepped up over the last 3 years. And again, if something happens in the centre back position, of course, Connor Antley can step into that spot to cover, and then Deon Harris will start at right wing back or right midfield, whatever
yeah.
you like. But yes, I would like Connor Antley. That's my vote to get on that right wing back starting spot. But I'm going to transition this to my MVP of last season. Yes, Charlie Dennis was the front runner for the
Yeah,
MVP for the Rowdies. But I love Jordan Doherty. I think he was the quiet hero for the Rowdies. He covered so many
absolutely.
spots for us in midfield, made very few mistakes. He was the rock for everyone to build off of. And he did that week in, week out when people were dropping off with injuries and
Yep,
fatigue. Jordan
yep.
Doherty covered whatever gap the coach asked for. He was the unsung hero for the Rowdies. No longer unsung. He was the hero for the Rowdies in 2023.
Absolutely. Played center back when he had to, was in the
Oh, yeah.
midfield. I even remember a game where he was playing like right back. I mean,
Yep.
truly, truly utility guy. So let's use
And
that to
quality too,
transition.
not just
Yeah, no,
plug
go
any
for it.
holes. He was quality on the ball, made
Yeah,
great decisions. His passing was crisp.
yeah,
Defensively, he was sound. So absolutely. Jordan Doherty, to you.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of the guys, again, we know for sure is coming back next year. I'll just go into that really quickly just to kind of refresh everybody on where we're at with signings, with re-signings. The guys we know for sure are coming back next year. We'll put for sure in quotes. Again, we saw what happened with JJ Williams. The guys we have re-signed to the squad and signed are Phil Brano at goalkeeper, defenders Connor Antley, Freddie Kleeman, Aaron Guillen, Forrest Lasso, Jordan Doherty also thrown in there as a defender, but
Yeah.
whatever. More of a midfielder, in my opinion. Midfielders Blake Bodily, Danny Crisostomo, Charlie Dennis, Leo Fernandez, Deon Harris, Lewis Hilton, Zach Ervo, and Joshua Perez, a name we haven't mentioned yet. And then
Yeah.
finally, your two forwards, Manuel Arteaga and Cal Jennings, as of now. Joshua Perez is a really interesting player, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm really curious what his role is going to be next year. He kind of came in and just slotted in, didn't really do anything that, worth criticizing, which is pretty good, right? I mean, if you're not,
Yeah.
no news is good news. That's what they say, right? So I'm curious what his full potential is, or if he's going to be more of a depth piece. He can play on that right side. We were talking about that right side just now, Ryan, and I think he's a guy that could be in the conversation to be on that right side. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's more of a depth piece.
I think he was brought in when there were so many injuries. Rowdies needed players in the midfield, guys who could handle the ball, which he can do. I don't think he ever got a full chance to show what he had or what he has to offer. But now, with these players, Blake Bodily coming in on that left-hand side, Charlie Dennis, Lewis Hilton, maybe Joshua Perez. I take it back. I don't see Jake Harmon here. So maybe Joshua Perez will back up Blake Bodily on the left-hand side. We'll find out. But as far as I can see, Blake Bodily will be starting. You have Lewis Hilton. You have Charlie Dennis. And then on the right, you have Zach Heravo as well. That's your four in the midfield. Up top, you're going to have Leo Fernandez, Manuel Ortega, Cal Jennings. Then you have at the back, Connor Antley, Aaron Guillen, Forrest Lasso, maybe Jordan Doherty being asked to play one of the defensive roles. We'll see. But if you're just going to go three at the back, then you're looking at Aaron Guillen, Forrest Lasso, Connor Antley will be the three at the back. And then if you're going to go five across, Blake Bodley left wing back. You have Lewis Hilton next to him, Zach Heravo, attacking midfield,
Yep.
Leo Fernandez, Charlie Dennis, Zach Heravo, Josh Perez on the right, and then Ortega and Jennings up top. So they have a lot of options.
Absolutely.
It's just going to be very competitive to get into that midfield. But again, Josh Perez, going back to what you asked, it's he didn't really get much of a chance to show what we had. So we still don't know. The jury's still out.
Yeah, he's for sure. I think a wild card is a good way to describe him right now. We don't really know what he brings to the table fully, but I guess we'll see. I'm a huge fan of Dayon Harris. I hope he finds a way to break into the lineup a bit more this year. It seems like he's always been on the cusp of kind of breaking through. He has so much potential, I think, and I'm really, really curious to see if this offseason could be the one that breaks through.
Carlos, I was on that train. I was on that bus last season. I would sound the alarm for Dayon Harris. Love his ability, so quick. But I think Dayon's issue is not with his feet and his body. I think Dayon, he has to work on his confidence. He has to believe and show for the ball and want the ball. That's a huge part of this game.
Yeah.
Belief, that psyche. And when he gets the ball in attacking positions, he has to have that belief and bravery to take responsibility and not relieve responsibility and just roll the ball back into the middle. He has to take his player on 1v1. I remember Coach Collins shouting his lungs out at him because he wouldn't drive the ball at the defender. That's what the Rowdies relied on for the outside players to take their player 1v1. That'll create space for the guys in the middle. And Dayon was always very shy about that. So I think Dayon has to take that next step this year. This is it. Sink or swim for Dayon Harris in 2024.
Yeah. Yeah. In this kind of system of the wing back, it just feels like there's not a clear cut spot for him because he has to be able to defend a bit. I don't really know much about his defensive abilities. We'll have to see. We really will have to see. I think he has a big opportunity this offseason. I was hoping, I don't know if you remember this guy, Ryan. This might be even before your time. The name Malik Johnson on the right side. Does that ring a bell?
Air Canada.
Yeah.
Air Canada. He would just take guys on 1v1.
Exactly.
Not a problem. You know he's going to go right eventually, and you couldn't stop it.
Exactly.
Malik Johnson was one of the stars of the show. Had a little bit of a gelling problem with the group to begin with, but eventually he conformed to what what Coach Collins wanted. So Malik Johnson, Air Canada.
That's a player that I've always kind of hoped Dayon Harris would grow into that role. I mean, you knew what Malik Johnson was going to do. He was going to cut to that right side and rip a shot or throw a cross in the box, but he was so dangerous on that side just because even though you knew what he was going to do, you couldn't stop it. So I've been hoping for Dayon Harris to kind of find that Malik Johnson in him, but we'll have to see. We really will.
But Malik had that belief, right? So that's something you can learn, but it's always, of course, nicer or best to have it innate, you know?
Yeah. By the way, Freddie Kleeman also in here. You mentioned Guillen, Lasso, and Antley kind of as your main three. Kleeman is what a name to have on your bench, by the way. I mean, Freddie Kleeman to be coming off the bench is really, really great stuff at this point in the offseason. I love huge, quite literally huge. And then having Aaron Guillen back there as well. I love Guillen as a left back, but I think his natural spot is back there in a back three in a center back role. He's so quick. I think that's huge to have back there. Speed in this league is key. It really is. Such a young league. Players are so fast. Guillen and Antley back there, I think, are huge to have to kind of offset Forrest Lasso's maybe lack of speed, we could say.
But people don't realize Aaron Guillen, he was always in the top 10 in passes in this league because we always use him to get the ball out of the back to the midfielders or to make the right decision. That's how good of a passer he is out of the back. Sure. Very, very bright footballer and great passer on touch, like a real Central American, South American sort of flair, even though playing left center back or left back. And very, very important to have back there to bring the ball out of the back.
For sure. Great. So that is the roster where it stands today. Mentioning a couple big names. Keep an eye out here. A couple names that might break through. Still plenty of offseason left, though, Ryan. I mean, we'll see what happens. Is there any area in particular, maybe other than goalie? We only have Phil Brano officially re-signed. Is there any area in particular where you might be looking for a bit more depth this offseason?
Up top, I think Manuel Ortega and Cal Jennings are fantastic. Which is always nice to have the luxury of to to come off the
Right.
bench, just a
Yeah.
talented veteran willing to come in and give you 15 minutes. Or if a player is laboring, he can come in and give you 45. So that'll be nice to have that extra center forward to come in and relieve one of these two players, whether it's within a game or to give you 60 minutes if one of these players are injured. So I would say up top, huge to have a genuine number 9 who's not looking for a lot of minutes, but just wants to contribute.
Yeah. I want to say, and let me fact check myself. It's the big name out of Louisville. I want to say Cam Lancaster, right? Is he looking for a team currently?
Well, he's like, I mean, he is like the Leo Fernandez to Rowdies. So I just don't see Cam leaving Louisville unless something really dramatic happens in negotiations.
Is it? I want to say, it's, like, I know we mentioned it last week. My memory is terrible. Oh my goodness. But whatever. You know what? Ignore I said that. It might be Cam Lancaster. I could just be making this up. There is a name out of Louisville that the contract negotiations fell through a bit. So
Okay.
I'm like 90% sure it's Cam Lancaster. If it
Wow,
is, hey,
that's
why
huge.
not go out and get him too? I mean, we're having a big offseason as it is already. Why not just add to that? We can be the LA Dodgers of USL now, just bringing in big name.
Yeah,
after
that's gonna spell problems for Arteaga and Kyle Jennings because they're each gonna want to have significant minutes, and with
that's a good point.
Lancaster coming in, he's gonna
Yeah.
demand a lot of minutes. He's earned that
Sure.
right. So
Sure.
if he doesn't go, I mean, if he doesn't re-sign with Louisville, which will be very, very surprising, I mean, look out for Birmingham or Charleston to pick him up. I mean,
Yep.
that'd be huge.
Yeah.
Final piece to the puzzle for them to get them over the top, you know?
Yeah. Big name out there. Cool. All right. So before we move on, we'll talk. I just want to mention a little bit about, now we're talking about, other teams across the league. There's been a bunch of big signings over the past month. Before I jump into any of that, I want to throw in a shameless plug here, Ryan. Liking and subscribing is free, but if you need some new threads this holiday season, I know we just passed holidays, but hey, maybe you want to give a gift for New Year's. I don't know. You can support this podcast by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the cool designs we've cooked up over there. The link is in the description of this episode. Use the promo code COYR for 10% off. Again, promo code COYR for 10% off anything in the store. Go check it out. Plenty of cool stuff over there. And hey, not too late to give out Christmas gifts, I say. It's only, December 26th? It's still Christmas. People still have their Christmas.
Absolutely. It's Christmas until, I think, January 6th, I believe. That's the
well, why not? Yeah, we'll go out.
Yeah.
There you go. Cool. Okay, Mr. Ryan Davis, before we wrap up, I want to mention a couple big signings that have happened across the league, get a little bit of your insight about that, kind of see how the rest of the league is shaping up. Because, again, the Rowdies aren't the only team in this league. We talk about them a lot, but there's plenty of other really, really good-looking squads that have been put together in a really short time. In the case of Rhode Island, in the case of other squads like Charleston Battery, a team that made it to the final last year before getting upset by Phoenix Rising. Charleston re-signed most of their Eastern Conference Championship squad. Recently, I think just this past week, we heard about Jake LaCava going to the Charleston Battery. It was a multi-year contract with the club. It's reinforcing a really strong squad already. They just recently re-signed Mark Segbers at the fullback spot, one of the best in the league. And they added earlier this month, this is old news, but it's worth restating here. Charleston signed Aaron Malloy from Memphis, who, again, one of the best midfielders in the league, I would say. So this is a club that is really not messing around. Lee Cohen is not messing around on Charleston. I know they were putting together a pretty decent team last offseason. We saw what they could do. They made it to the final, and they were the favorite to win the final against Phoenix, and they're still not messing around. This offseason, they re-signed a huge chunk of that squad, and they're bringing in really good talent like we saw with LaCava. What do you think about that Charleston squad, Ryan?
Fantastic. When they came here last season, they looked like such a team compared to where the Rowdies were at that time. And they beat the Rowdies in Al Lang Stadium. Lee Cohen has the ability to be contagious. He brings that belief that this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to do it, and we're all going to fall into line, and we're going to make this happen. He did that last season with Charleston in the very first season. and it
Yeah.
took them all the way to the big dance. They won the East. They got to the final, tragically lost it in penalties. I thought they had it when they were up by 2 penalties. I'm like, unbelievable story. Anyway, heartbreaking for Charleston. I really felt it for them. I wish they won. But anyway, so getting Jake LaCava, understanding LaCava's story. LaCava went down to Miami thinking he was going to get minutes in MLS. Did not work out. Heartbroken. Rowdies threw him out of line. He comes back. He produces for a couple of matches. Coach Collins departs. And now LaCava is sitting in Tampa. New coach. Little disgruntled, sort of feeling sorry for himself, understandably, and never really gets going again. Now, going back to Lee. Lee knows him on a one-on-one basis, reinvigorates him. He goes back on that left-hand side, left attacking forward, and he's 22 years old. He knows what it takes to be a success. He's done that in the USL for the last 3 or 4 seasons. He knows what it takes. I think Jake LaCava is going to have a comeback year for Charleston. So yeah, we can talk about other new names.
Yeah.
But that recycled name, Jake LaCava, going to Charleston, I think is the biggest move out of all those moves because of the talent he possesses and the new chapter in his story.
Sure. And then this is also,
go ahead.
and their kind of go-to striker last season, Augustin Williams, is also out in Charleston as well. So there's clearly a need for a big attacking piece. I wouldn't be surprised if that's Jake LaCava. I think it's a good prediction. This could definitely be a big year for him. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. By the way, I fact-checked myself. It was Cam Lancaster who's officially out at Louisville.
Wow.
Didn't get that contract negotiation figured out.
Nice.
So we'll have to see what happens with him. That's a big name to look out for. Again, an older guy, but plenty of stuff left to give, obviously. Definitely not old per se. But he has plenty of talent to give, plenty of goals to score for whatever team picks him up. I mentioned him, but again, you're probably right. I don't imagine he shows up for the Tampa Bay Rowdies.
I got one.
What's that?
I got one. I got someone out there that's a number 9, and he's electric. His name is Jackson Conway, played for Atlanta United FC.
Yep.
So he was someone promised minutes in the MLS, never really crossed that barrier, but he's right on that thin line at 22 years old, where maybe in a year or 2 he could make that jump.
Absolutely.
But 23 goals in 74 appearances for Atlanta United, had a little loan in Phoenix, but those loans are so tough. Going into a new system, new coach, new surroundings, and you're expected to hit the ground running. It never really happens. So I think Jackson Conway, if he can land up in a team that's one piece away from the puzzle, let's say a Birmingham, Charleston, let's say Indy 11, a huge, a San Antonio, I think Jackson Conway could be that person to take that team to the promised land.
For sure. That's a name that we've seen appear in the USL multiple times. I remember really clearly during that COVID season, I was back at that first game back with like 50 fans in attendance against Atlanta United too. And he scored that first goal. Jackson Conway. I mean, he is a name that we've seen around for a little bit now. He is really talented, plenty of stuff to give, and I think he just needs an opportunity. I know JD, if you're listening to this, JD's a huge fan of Jackson Conway. He's been talking about bringing in the Rowdies forever, so he'd be ecstatic by that.
Yeah, he's a really good forward, but he's like he's one of those players that deserves to start and lead a front line.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure. Cool. And I'll just mention a couple other big signings I saw recently. We saw Juan Agudelo is reinforcing San Antonio's attack. That's a big name, former U.S. international, plenty of goals in him. He's leaving Birmingham, going over to a really good-looking San Antonio squad. Talking about Louisville City, by the way, Adrian Perez, who scored 10 goals last year for San Diego, is going to Louisville City. So Cam Lancaster out, Adrian Perez in. Tons and tons of attacking potential in that Louisville City squad. They're looking really good, as per usual. They know what moves to make. They know the good players to go out and grab, and they're not, shying away from bringing in big names. Adrian Perez is going to be huge for them. It's going to be really. And this league gets better every year. It just seems like
it really does.
I'm really curious to see what happens with some of these big names. Lastly, I'll throw in here. I saw Marcus Epps boosting Hartford's midfield, former USF guy, local kid from Tampa. He's going to Hartford, coming off of a career season, scoring 9 goals and 7 assists for Tulsa. Hartford also added Anderson Asiedu. Hartford is building a pretty good squad under everybody's nose. They're building a good-looking team.
I like
I wanted
Asiedu.
to, what's that?
I like Asiedu. He's
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah,
Tough player. He's the N'Golo Kante of USL. He's always moving, tackling.
yeah.
He's an excellent player.
Yeah, they're building. I wanted to throw them in there because Hartford has been kind of struggling to bounce back. They had a pretty good season a couple seasons ago, struggled last year. This is a team that can compete for sure. As of now, already plenty of offseason left. They could add other talent, but the Eastern Conference is looking really strong. You have your Charleston Batteries, your Louisville, your Tampa Bay Rowdies. Birmingham's always solid. Now Hartford building a really good team. You have Rhode Island building a really good team out of nowhere. This league is going to be really good. With that, Ryan, I want to ask you, we know the schedule's out as we begin to wrap up this episode. I want to ask you, are there any games on the schedule when you saw it come out that you said, this is a game I'm looking forward to? A couple of games out there that might be catching your attention in particular, as any of these new teams, maybe Rhode Island, get ready to come to Al Lang Stadium.
So funny you should ask that, Carlos, because the very first game of the season, Saturday, March 16th, San Antonio, September of this year, both teams are second in the East, second in the West, and San Antonio, Tampa goes across to San Antonio, and it was voted the number 1 game in 2023, finished 3-3, a slugfest, and they open up in Al Lang Saturday, March 16th. So that very first one to get the season underway, I'm looking forward to. San Antonio, of course, always a quality team. Rhode Island, right up after, 2 weeks later, Saturday, March 30th. Like you said, they're building it's a new team, first and foremost, and they're building a pretty good squad. And then we have the usual suspects as the season progresses. We have Birmingham. They are Saturday, May 11th. They come to town. Looking forward to that one. And of course, Louisville in June, Saturday, June 15th. That's always a great one to look forward to. So San Antonio to start off with, Rhode Island. So 2 great games in March. And as the season progresses, we have Birmingham and Louisville in those games coming up after that. So absolutely looking forward to those. And as we move forward, I mean, Orange County, Charleston Battery, Saturday. I mean, that is something you can't ignore. Saturday, July 27th. I mean, Lee Cohen, such strong ties to the Rowdies. He's building a wannabe dynasty over in Charleston.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's bringing Jake LaCava back in Al Lang Stadium, can't wait for Saturday, July 27th. Just taking a quick look at the schedule here. So yeah, that'll be the games I'm looking forward to. San Antonio first, and let's just say Charleston Battery second in Saturday, July 27th.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a much better test than San Antonio. First game at home, it's going to be a really good one. By the way, we mentioned Joshua Perez and kind of what his role was. He scored in that game against San Antonio in that just insane back and forth. He got the goal that was the go-ahead for about 10 minutes before San Antonio equalized late in stoppage time. That's going to be a really good one. I'll give the game against North Carolina a shout out as well. That's going to be a fun one. We haven't seen them in a very long time. Yeah, it's great to have them back. That'll be a late one. So, great.
And right after that, Seba Guenzati to finish off the season, Saturday, October 26th. I mean, what a way to finish it off to have one of the Rowdies heroes back in Al Lang.
There you go. If that doesn't convince you to buy season tickets right now, I don't know what will. Plenty of great games coming up. Mr. Ryan Davis, thank you so much for joining us. As we wrap up here, I'm going to remind everybody to give at RBLR Sports a follow on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere and everywhere we are. I'm at Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Ryan Davis, where can we find you on the social medias?
Ryan at COY, come on you Rowdies. So that's my tag name on used to be Twitter, now X.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Yeah. So just reach out to me. I will go back and forth. If you want to banter, let's have at it.
Awesome. And as always, I'm going to plug, use hashtag AskRBLR to throw in any questions, anything you want to talk about, anything you want to hear about in next week's episode. Use hashtag AskRBLR on Twitter to get us to see that. And we'll see you when we'll chat. Like and subscribe to all of our podcasts. Get the full experience on YouTube. If you want to see our lovely faces, and you can see Ryan's face as well. We're everywhere. On Spotify, iHeartRadio. As per usual, come on, you Rowdies. Have a good week, guys.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.